The anticipation of postseason hockey is providing no shortage of juicy nightly NHL matchups that are impacting your fantasy squad. And on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we have a number of intriguing angles to break down. A playoff push update. Is Nick Suzuki the most underrated player in the NHL? And how have these Blues kept winning? We'll break it all down for you while we get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL betting breakdowns, and all of the news from the hockey world that you need to dominate your fantasy leagues. Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I don't even know what day it is anymore, Steele. It could be the Wednesday edition for all I know. But all I know is right now, in the fantasy game, you can't afford to miss an angle out there. And as much as the days are all over the place for your boy, I think what we're covering on today's episode is going to help our listeners out there truly tap in. Is Nick Suzuki and these Montreal Canadiens for real? I want to talk about it, Steele. I also want to talk about these St. Louis Blues, which you and I haven't done. And we're going to do a little rapid fire around the league update, playoff push, LA Kings, the Knights clinch, Ovi closing in, big time bets for Thursday night's 9-game betting board. Over to you, Mr. Roden, because these Habs, I don't know about what you think, but when you got Nick Suzuki on the ice, I truly feel that they are in every single game right now, and this kid is doing some special things.
Yeah, I mean, Tuesday was an incredible day for hockey, and the teams we're highlighting on today's show. I mean, thrilling overtime wins, especially for the Canadiens to keep their playoff chances alive. An incredible way to secure 2 points. And we're going to break down Nick Suzuki. Same could be said for the St. Louis Blues, forcing an overtime and getting the game winner in overtime to keep their win streak alive and putting it to 10. But the Montreal Canadiens, Nick Suzuki, you hit it right there on the nail, my friend. Nick Suzuki might go down as the most underrated fantasy hockey piece this postseason or this year, and he's definitely one of the most underrated players that we need to be discussing. He needs the recognition that he definitely deserves, and the season he has put up. I mean, I watched the end of that Montreal Canadiens Florida Panthers game. He was doing it all, and I know a funky bounce, a lucky bounce off of Sam Reinhart in front of Vanacek, which goes right to Suzuki by the post, an empty netter. But the way he willed and the determination he had in overtime, working the offensive zone, the wraparound to finish it off, 2 goals, and I believe 38 seconds. I believe it was the fastest or second fastest time from someone scoring in the third period and scoring again in overtime.
Sounds about right.
He has been incredible all season. Definitely deserves the recognition. He had an ADP of 50.2. So he was getting drafted in the 5th round on average this past season. This guy's a 2nd-round draft pick in fantasy hockey leagues, the way he's playing right now. The fact that he's 25 years old, he's already got the captain. He's already got the C on his jersey for the Montreal Canadiens. He's leading by example. You have Cole Caulfield, 30-plus goal scorer this season as well. Nick Suzuki, 79 points in 74 games. I'll leave Suzuki for you as well, but Lane Hudson, this guy's an absolute incredible player.
Thank you very much.
For them. To me, he is clear-cut the number 1 guy for the Calder Trophy at this point. I don't care about Mitchkov. I don't care about Celebrini. If Lane Hudson is not on this team, there's no way the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, regardless of how good Nick Suzuki and Caulfield have been, regardless of how decent Sam Montembeault has been in the crease lately as well. It doesn't matter. If they don't have Lane Hudson on the back end, they're not even close to a playoff spot right now. He deserves to win the Calder Trophy. I don't know what trophy can be given out to Nick Suzuki, but he needs some sort of award on his mantle after the season that he's put on for Montreal right now. So a great win over Florida, obviously securing 2 points that they desperately needed to hold on to that second wildcard spot. There's still a chance out there. I'm praying for it, but there's still a chance Montreal can somehow land that top wild card spot over the Ottawa Senators. But regardless, fantastic job Tuesday night from both Suzuki and Lane Hudson, who had another 3-assist night.
First and foremost, we have seen what this Montreal Canadiens franchise can do if they squeak into the postseason. And I know this is a much different team than the team that went all the way to the Cup and I don't want to say gave Vegas a run for their money, but the point I'm trying to make here is once the playoffs start and you've got the energy that this Montreal Canadiens team has now pulsing through it, and I know that's one big game, but they play in front of the best fans in the NHL. Let's be real. As Toronto Maple Leafs fans, I try to always bring an unbiased opinion, especially against the teams that I like to cheer against the most. And hats off to the Habs. And hats off to their fans that give them that extra edge. You don't want this team in the first round of the playoffs. If you go down as a favored seed, let's say you lose one game at home and you got to go back to the Bell Center and you want to do that crowd. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess what I want to say is this. Number one, before I gush on Suzuki, I want to throw a little bit of love to the top 4 D pairing of Matheson, Carrier, Gooley, and Hudson. Because now all of a sudden, what has been their clear weakness, and they're still in the top 10 in goals against, and I know the goaltending and the D can still get there. I just wanted to throw a little bit of love at that blue line because you mentioned it. Lane Hudson is not getting nearly enough credit from this podcast, and he won't miss those opportunities. He's doing historically good things, Steele. And I don't want to get off on a tangent because I'm trying to keep it honed in here on Suzuki, which you and I have now been doing this a number of years together. There was a season there that I drafted Nick Suzuki, and you messaged me and you were like, pal, too early on this guy. You have to remember that thing that you and I talk about, separating his meaningfulness on the ice to what he brings fantasy-wise. I think we can kind of put that out of the window now because not only is he getting it done, he's getting it done in the clutch. And I'll leave it at this for you. When I look up game-winning goals this year, Steele, a very key stat, mind you, not only in fantasy, but clearly in the standings, he has 8 of them, okay? Let me throw out a few other names on this list that are just above him with 9 and up. William Nylander, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikita Kucherov, and Leon Draisaitl. And I'm trying to say is start putting some more respect on my man's name, who has also been chipping in with very solid fantasy peripherals. 58 hits, 64 block shots, plus 12 steal. The shots on net could obviously come up, but I think this is what happens when you're such a smart player and so responsible as Nick Suzuki. You're out there trying to make things better for your teammates. I will leave it at this. This Montreal Canadiens team needs to tighten it up a little bit on a 200-foot game, and if they do that and get some big saves from Montembeault, we know that the playoffs is a different beast.
It definitely is. And there might be a lot of people out there that are shocked to even see the Montreal Canadiens in a playoff spot right now and some of their talent like Lane Hudson and Nick Suzuki popping off as well. I think it's also, this is sort of a side note, but as much as that is shocking to a lot of people out there, I think it's evenly as shocking that the Boston Bruins are the worst team in the Eastern Conference right now. They are dead last in the Eastern Conference. Let me get this stat correct. I hope I'm getting the number right.
Yeah, get it right.
This is the first time since 1997 that the Boston Bruins have been in last place in the Eastern Conference at this point in the season. So we love to see that. We were definitely a few years early on that take, but we're happy to see them at the bottom of the barrel now in the Eastern Conference.
Yes,
no more Bruin rivalry. We've got the Ottawa Senators, we've got the Montreal Canadiens, and every other team in the Atlantic Division to deal with now other than those Boston Bruins.
And we got a whole lot more to talk about on today's episode. We're going to get to the St. Louis Blues. We're going to get to tonight's 9-game betting board. Hope to feed you guys a few more winners. And we also have to talk about a little bit of a playoff push update very quickly, almost rapid fire, I think, at this point, Steele, because we got to talk about these St. Louis Blues, Binnington, your boy Robert Thomas, and a little bit of how are they doing it right now, Steele. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends, our old friends at Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celeb or two on the court side. You want to catch that game in person? Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Their new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Steele and I have used the Game Time app a bunch for getting those tickets to the hockey games that we love to see wherever you're at. It's easy ticket shopping. Check out the Game Time app. Amazing deals across the board, whatever matchups you need. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And thank you so much once again for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review for your boys Flip Livingstone and Steel Road. And we appreciate you all out there. Thank you so much for all that love and support. St. Louis Blues, like I said, crazy overtime win against the Detroit Red Wings Tuesday night, just like in the same fashion for those Montreal Canadiens over the Panthers. They continue to absolutely dominate on this 10-game win streak. And who deserves the credit for this? I'll throw that question out to you first, and then you throw it back to me. But who deserves the credit for the Blues' success at this point in the season in this 10-game win streak?
Well, why don't I leave Robert Thomas to you, because I would say he's a part of it, because 28 points in 20 games since the Four Nations is obviously critical.
Yes,
however, you might want to be talking about the third star of the month in Mr. Jordan Binnington. And I think I pointed this out the other day about the St. Louis Blues streak, about the teams that they have beat. And I can ream that off for you, Steele. Minnesota, Anaheim, Nashville, Vancouver. And this is in order. Chicago, Nashville, Montreal, Nashville again, Colorado, and Detroit. A number of those are one-goal games. So I don't know how much I'm reading into this in terms of what it means for playoff success. But you know what I'm going to throw out there? Get yourself a piece of the St. Louis Blues, because hot is hot. And winning games is winning games. So I don't want to poo-poo on it, but the big reason why is, how about this deal? Over ending the month on a 5-game win streak of March, a 1.58 goals against and a 938 save percentage for Binner. He has been sensational. He's 8-2-0 over his last 9 starts overall with a 910 save percentage. And he is the third star of the month, but behind 2 really good performances, Jack Eichel and John Tavares. So I know they're forwards. I know it's different scenarios. Jordan Binnington, to answer your question, long answer, real long, it's got to be Binner. I've thrown out Joel Hofer's name because when he's been in there, he's been good too. But clearly, this guy's cooking, Four Nations or otherwise.
Look, I'm going to take a crazy angle with who deserves who's the reasoning for the success of the Blues right now. And I'm going all the way back to Team Canada's management, front office, John Cooper behind the bench. Team Canada deserves the credit for what Jordan Binnington's been able to do and accomplish since coming back to the NHL regular season. He's gone 11-2-0 in that time since the Four Nations face-off break. And I want to give them credit, because when we go back to the building of this team, the building of the roster, there were so many haters out there and and deniers about Jordan Binnington being the guy. Why isn't Logan Thompson in there? Look, they knew what they were doing. Jordan Binnington heard all the hate from the outside, heard all the love from internally with his group, his teammates, his coaches, the management, and the confidence, and they just threw him out there and let him be, and look what he's done. He's absolutely run with it. So number one, it goes to the management and coaching staff of Team Canada. Number two, exactly your point, is Jordan Binnington himself, because he's been on an absolute roll since coming back from the Four Nations face-off. But to your credit as well, it's really this entire team. You can look at the coaching staff and the guy they brought in, Jim Montgomery, has turned the culture around in St. Louis. Like this really does remind me of the Blues going on the run in 2019 and ended up winning the Stanley Cup championship, becoming the Stanley Cup championship. Yep. Very similar paths right now for what this team has done. Jim Montgomery deserves a lot of credit. You look at, again, the management in St. Louis, offer-sheeting Philip Broberg, offer-sheeting Dylan Holloway. Dylan Holloway, he's got what? 63 points in 76 games. You have 3 offensive weapons right now with 60 plus points. You have the goal scorer in Jordan Kyrou. You have the playmaker in Robert Thomas. And then you have Dylan Holloway, who just does everything. He hits. He brings the physical aspect. He's scoring goals. He's playmaking. He's setting them up. Plus 21 for the kid right now. On the back end, you bring in Cam Fowler, who's been really good down the stretch as well. Philip Broberg, who I just mentioned. Bolduc, the rookie. Jake Neighbors, who we've talked about. Everyone deserves credit for the success. And I do understand it's been a very easy schedule for the St. Louis Blues during
I'd say so, yeah. Just had to point it out.
No, of course. It has to be mentioned. But regardless of that, they're getting the wins. They're getting the points to secure a spot in the playoffs. They hurdle over the Minnesota Wild for that top spot in the West, in the top wild card spot in the Western Conference right now. Everybody deserves credit, but in my order, it goes Team Canada's management, it goes Jordan Binnington, and then everybody else on the St. Louis team right now.
Absolutely love that take. Shout out to the management. We don't usually do too much of that, and I appreciate you. At the end of the day, I need to see things shake out, and very soon we're going to see what this team is made of. The fantasy takeaways there, you threw them out. There's some targets there that are lurking with value. Bolduc, you threw it out. Holloway's not going to be out there. You might be able to grab yourself a little Jake Neighbors, Broberg, perhaps Fowler. Those are the names. And on a spot start, I'm loving Hofer. So to bring it back full fantasy circle, those are some good options that you should be targeting, because even if this team starts to lose a couple in their last, I believe they have actually the least game in hand. They have 6 games left. There is value here to be had regardless. That's just what happens when teams go on heater steel quickly, very quickly. Updates. The Golden Knights clinch. The LA Kings are right there, still winning games 7-3-0. Want to throw out these angles for teams playing real good. And I guess what I do want to finish it with is, how sensational is this Ovechkin chase? Did you see him out at the bar the other night celebrating the rookie's debut? I think it was
Ryan Leonard.
Yeah, Leonard. And this is sensational stuff. I don't want to get off fantasy too much, because that's what we do here. We're always going to keep it focused for you guys. But when you look at what's going on in this playoff picture, this playoff race, OV4 away, the Knights now have clinched, everything that's going on a nightly basis, we are so fired up for what's going to happen down the stretch, what's going to happen in the postseason, Steel. I would just say, keep your finger on the pulse here. This isn't rocket science. If you're going out on those stream options, you're going out just to add a player per night, go with the teams that have the most on the line. It's very simple. Go with the hot teams. Don't get crazy here. Hone in, lock in, and make sure you tap into the pod every single night.
How funny would it be if the Washington Capitals take home the President's Trophy, take home the top spot in the Eastern Conference, and somehow the New York Rangers come in at the second wildcard spot? It's literally just a 180 of what happened last year with the Rangers finishing atop of the Eastern Conference. I think that would be spectacular going into the first round. But what Ovechkin is doing right now is absolutely incredible on all aspects and all fronts, right? For what we're seeing. I mean, he's 4 goals away from breaking the all-time record from Wayne Gretzky, I believe. Like I mentioned, he's going to start soon traveling to wherever the Washington Capitals are playing their game. You know,
I love that.
I believe the remaining schedule for the Washington Capitals are all Metropolitan Division games. So it shouldn't be going too far from Washington. Anyways, the fact that he is doing this at 39 years old, you know, the fact that he broke his tibia or his femur back in December and was back after 5-6 weeks and came back like nothing ever happened too. It's incredible. And it really does. You take a step back and just start to appreciate the greatness of what we're all watching right now. I mean, even my girlfriend was watching Ovechkin, the Washington Capitals game the other day, and it's like, oh my God, he just scored another one. He just continues to defy physics almost. It's incredible to watch him play. And again, like we've said, it's going to be sad to see him go when his time is done in the National Hockey League. But I think we're all sitting on the edge of our seats waiting for him to break that record.
And while this season winds down for the Caps, let's be clear, much like I just said, get yourself of any peripheral piece that you can around Ovechkin if it's available. I've talked about Protas at length. He's probably not out there anymore. But when I look at this schedule for the Caps deal, after the Canes the other night, They have the Blackhawks, Islanders, Hurricanes, Blue Jackets twice, Islanders, and Penguins. He might get 8 more, not 4 more at this pace. So all of these angles are what I'm trying to highlight basically are it might not be so obvious in terms of if your team's even on the bubble. Grab what you can of these hot, good angles while the season's still out there. We'll talk about a lot of different angles for Keeper Dynasty, for what you should be doing to prepare for next season all summer long. Don't get me started on these playoff breakdowns that are coming, Steel. Let's get after it.
Those playoff breakdowns, they're coming soon, just like big time bets after the break. But first, this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here. It's the Final Four, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year. It didn't pan out, but FanDuel makes it easy to back them with the spreads, the totals, and those game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. I love that about it. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I really do appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Big time bets. Interesting games on the schedule for Thursday. If you don't mind, I'm just going to rattle all 3 of my picks off and see how you feel about them. Number 1, Lightning on the money line going into Ottawa. I'm taking the Lightning on the money line -114 right now. I think it's going to be a really good game. I can see it being really close, but the Lightning offensive weapons, Brady Tkachuk missed last game as well. We don't know if he's going to be back.
He's banged up still. He's banged up.
He is banged up. Yeah. I mean, the Four Nations face-off banged up a lot of Team USA. Austin Matthews, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, obviously Charlie McAvoy. Anyways, Lightning moneyline first pick -114. Second pick, Blues on the puck line at home against the Penguins +118 right now. I'm absolutely loving that pick. Third and final pick, Avalanche on the money line against the Blue Jackets -166. That will be my lock of the night. Those are my 3 picks.
I absolutely loved this board. And just first and foremost, to talk about the Ottawa Senators, it's really interesting how the difference 2 weeks can make in terms of an NHL playoff push. No, just for real. Like, they beat Boston 6-3, then they beat Toronto 4-2. Then they lose back-to-back. They beat New Jersey, and then it's losses to Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Buffalo again, and the only thing in between,
they got swept by Buffalo. So I don't feel so bad about being swept by Ottawa now because Buffalo swept them.
That helps a little bit, but then only in between are wins against close 1-goal wins against Detroit and Columbus. So what I'm trying to say is if Brady Tkachuk is even halfway hurt, this team's in trouble. And I know we talked a lot about them. Anyway, love your pick. I got Tampa on the money line as well. Columbus at CBJ, you mentioned it. I also really, really like that over in this situation. Of the last 8 tilts between these two have gone over the number. I'm going to take it at 6.5. This one smells like an over, and I'm feeling it. I actually have 4 picks tonight. Steele, before I get to my lock of the night, I got one more for you. The LA Kings in this spot, headed into Utah. This is a dark horse team written all over it. And how about this? 9-0-1, the LA Kings against Utah. This one's kind of too good to be true almost, but hit me with the Kings on the money line against Utah. Loving it. And this one has got to be my favorite one on the board. I think Edmonton smashes the San Jose Sharks tonight. And I know it's the Sharks, and that might be an easy thing to say. But with Leon back and 2 big wins, let's be clear. Calgary, a very bitter rival, 3-2, hunting for a playoff spot. Vegas, a very good team, 3-2. This could be one of those galvanizing moments with Leon back. I expect the Edmonton Oilers to blow the doors off of the San Jose Sharks. I got the Oilers on the puck line as my lock of the night. They are 9-1-0 in their last 10 against the Sharks. So hit me with the Oilers on the puck line. That one's for you, Puck Line King.
Loving those picks, loving the puck line. And look, it's kind of crazy the fact that we still view the LA Kings as a dark horse, even though they're second in their division and only 5 points back
Right?
of the
They
top
just feel
spot
like a
in the
dark horse. No
Pacific.
one's talking about
I
them.
mean, look, they are a dark horse because every single time you think about them in the playoffs the last few seasons, they
Right.
get dominated by the Edmonton Oilers. So it's funny to think about them that way. But I agree with you. They're definitely still a dark horse out there, and they have a lot to give going into the postseason. Those are the bets, those are the picks, and the locks of the night for Thursday. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen Monday through Friday. For your second listen, please make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From your boys here on this podcast, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, we wish you good luck with your matchups. We wish you good luck with those bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.